Hello, hello, everybody. Today we get the wonderful pleasure of talking with our friend Robin Pasley of Pasley Commercial Interiors. As our conversation progressed, it took us down this wonderful path of discovering ourselves and who we are, and as business owners, staying authentic to our true selves through our business and showing ourselves to the world and who we are and how we show up. And so, this episode is very deep and reflective and has some very fun twists and turns and some abstract viewpoints. So, join me, Jason, and my friend Robin on a path full of adventure and self-discovery on Show Me Yours. Welcome to Show Me Yours. I'm here with my co-host, Jason. Welcome back, Jason.
Hey, everyone.
And I am here with my lovely friend, Robin Pasley. And she is with Pasley Commercial Interiors. And she helps small businesses specifically find ways to grow through, I was going to say quality, but I don't even think it's quality. It's excellent and exceptional interior design. Her philosophy behind interiors is one that speaks to my HR geeky heart, because I think that we're birds of a similar feather in the fact and acknowledging that an individual's environment makes or breaks their well-being, their spirit, how they show up day to day. And so as we dive into today's conversation, just know that you're looking at a badass.
You're so sweet. That's a little much maybe, but I think I appreciate that.
Well, you do wear a
Thank you.
superhero cape here.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yes. So with that said, Robin, do you want to talk a little bit about your team and what you do over at Pasley?
Yeah, so we have a commercial interior design firm and a commercial furniture dealership, which helps us to kind of handle a project from start to finish, not only handle the construction side of it and designing the space, but also outfitting it with the proper furniture that really fits the budget, speaks to the client's brand, and also really serves their workforce. And we really focus on helping businesses grow through interior design, which I know some people are going to be like, what? What is she talking about? But what we understand interior design to be is not just about things being functional or pretty, but we want to tell the story of our client's business in that space, whether it's a restaurant or a medical office or attorney's office or whatever, an HR office. Mm-hmm. We want to be able to really express them in that space so that people come in and have an experience. And even if it's just, nowadays, social media has changed everything. It used to be your office could just be functional. You get in there, you get out, you go on to the next thing. But I believe that social media really impacted people's experiences in that they begin to be able to see other people's spaces where they've been. And it kind of raised the bar for everyone. Yeah. So now when you go into your dentist office, look at it, like branding is everywhere now. It's not just, so-and-so dental office. There's icons and stuff and things. And so we really anchor off of that branding piece and help really establish who they are inside of that space.
I love that.
Yeah.
I do. I love telling a story through just walking into an environment, and you can look around and say, I feel you.
Yes.
I know who you are.
Yeah.
Without even reading, that boring our history page or where we came from. It's just, you can walk around and say, okay, I got you. You're my people, or you're not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's really it. That's one of the things we always tell our clients is we want them to know who you are without reading your values and mission statement. Mm-hmm. And we do that through materials and other things that we use in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to jump into rapid fire.
Okay.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Looking back at those days of starting Pasley, let's talk. Tell us about your very first project and one of the craziest things you did to accomplish that project.
Oh my gosh. This may take me a minute. Well, I'll tell you about projects where I made mistakes. And the craziest part was donning my painting gloves and going in to repaint whole rooms because I called out the wrong color.
Oh, no.
And I was early in the day, so I didn't have the extra money to pay someone else. So I was like, I'm going to fix it. I mean, it was usually paint that I did that with. I did it on another project. I just forgot to put the room in the scope. So I went in and just painted it myself.
Did you really?
But, you know, I was going to deliver for the client. I wasn't going to, they weren't going to feel it. I did.
Yeah.
but, you know, I made the mistake. So crazy things besides that was, gosh, I can't remember anything that was too outrageous. I think anything that felt that way to me felt a little crazy was maybe just because I, you know, failed.
Yeah.
Missed something and just had to, you know, do something I wasn't expecting to do.
When you first start a business, there's always those mistakes that you make. And then, you know, that late night of painting that one room that you totally forgot, it can turn into a crazy night.
It was. Yeah, it did. It just turned into a crazy week because of that.
Right, exactly. You had mentioned Story Coffee was one of your first clients.
Actually, Story Coffee was one of the, I had to repaint a whole section of their space.
Oh, did you really?
Because I called out the color and I got there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrific. And I told the owner, I'll be back later tonight with paint in hand. And he was like, what? It's like, yes, I'm going to fix this. But Story Coffee was actually my very first commercial project. And it was really exciting because he was going to be turning a tiny house into a coffee house, which I had never done that. And he had never done that. So that was a fun project to work on together. But the other fun part is that it won recognition from Architectural Digest as the most beautiful coffee house in Colorado in 2018, which I was really, you know, proud of for both he and I, you know, for his space getting that recognition as well as that being my first commercial project. So that felt really good.
How did you make that transition from, this is your first commercial project, but before you did residential, right?
Oh, yeah,
I did. And so was it just circumstance that brought you two together?
Yeah, actually. So I had started my firm back in 2013, and we were still climbing out of, you know, the slump for residential you know, home sales. And so staging was necessary. And that's how I started my business, was just staging homes and making connections with real estate agents. And then I got my first interior design job with a couple. And, you know, it just kind of built from there, one thing after another. And then this, the owner of Story Coffee actually is a friend of mine. And so he was coming into town and wanted to build a space. And I said, would you let me do it? And because I said, I've never done commercial before, and I think it could be really awesome to, get my hands wet. And he has stories to tell about working with me because I was very specific about some things. And because I had a great relationship with him and he trusted me, he was like, okay. Someday if you ever interview him, he might have something to say about that. But anyways, but he trusted me, and that was really an excellent, place to get my feet wet in commercial design, especially something that was hospitality directed. And then it just, one job at a time, you just start getting, used to what you're doing in each realm, both residential, commercial. And then in 23, I changed and began only doing commercial. I stopped doing residential. So that's been the big shift for our company. And that was when we picked up commercial furniture as well.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
It is. It's kind of like, hold your breath. Here we go. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to do a card. Here. So pick a card, any card.
Okay. Do I read it?
All right. Go ahead and read it.
What fear have you outgrown? Oh, what a great question.
That is a great question.
You hope you have an answer, right? That I've outgrown one of my fears. Oh, gosh.
While you're thinking about it, I'll tell you guys mine. When I was growing up, I remember the distinct journey of this fear. My dad took us to the, what is it called down near Durango? The cliff dwellings.
Oh, yeah.
The national park down there.
Yeah.
What is that called? I'm drawing a blank. Anyways, so we did a hike and a tour, and we had to climb up. It felt like a 300-foot ladder on the side of a cliff to get to one of the dwellings. And ever since then, I realized my fear of heights. And so I was terrified as a kid growing up with the significant fear of heights. Like I could barely even like step out onto a balcony, or, an apartment complex or anything like that. And I would just be terrified. But what helped me get over my fear of heights was shortly after high school, I worked at a flight school and I was the receptionist. And one day we also had, it was a flight school. And then we had a commercial, not a commercial, a private jet type of service where they would do, little flights and stuff for people privately. Anyways, so the pilot came to me and he's like, hey, listen, I need someone. Sorry if I'm telling on you guys publicly, but they needed someone to sit in the co-pilot seat as they did this flight. And they're like, we really need you to sit in the co-pilot seat and we're going to fly down to Texas and then we'll bring you back. And I'm like, okay. So we hopped in and we had this charter. I get into the co-pilot seat and I'm thinking, this is going to be terrible. I'm going to die. It's going to be horrible. But we fly all the way down to Denton, Texas, and we drop off our passengers from the charter. And then we start flying back. And the pilot looks at me and he's like, do you want to try and fly? And I'm like, oh my word. I don't know. I'm so scared. But eventually I was like, okay. And then he just let go of the yoke. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? And he's like, grab the yoke. And I got to fly pretty much the whole entire way back from Texas to Colorado. Wow. And I realized, and I started taking private pilot lessons from that point and got very close to becoming a private pilot license or a licensed private pilot. But what I realized is that it helped me regain a sense of control over heights again. It was, conquering that fear, but knowing I can be that high up and still control my destiny. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. Hopefully that got your juices flowing.
Well, so it makes me think about, because it has to do with control.
Always, right? Isn't that usually associated to fear?
Oh my gosh. So I've been a creative since I was a child. I've always just been in some kind of creative work. And I had a 20-year career in performing arts. And so it's hard when you make something that people are meant to enjoy to not be a control freak about that, and be like, it has to be perfect. It has to be, I see it this way, or I imagine it this way, or I created it to be this way. It must be that way. Yeah. It's very easy for that to be a thing. And that actually has a ton of fear associated because it links back to your ego, right? So in the latter part of my music career, we were doing a lot of collaborations, and I began learning how collaboration was better than what I just decided by myself or created by myself. And it's translated into my career now in that, sometimes when I'm working, on a project, the question will come, why are we doing it like this? And I'll say, well, this is what the client wanted. And there'll be a comment of, but I don't think I really like that. And I'm like, that's okay. It's not about us. It's about them. And what they wanted in this part was more important, than what we thought it was going to be. And because we may have had another idea, but that part of collaboration is necessary, because if I'm going to have a design firm and it's about my ego, this is going to be terrible potentially. And I've heard people talk about working with designers that it was so much about what they designed that it became very difficult. And I'm actually so thankful that I had that other career to kind of wipe the egotistical, prideful artist off of me so that I could actually run an interiors business that was all about the client and really about, focusing on them, hearing them. Our best skill set, and we're always trying to get better at it, is listening. And listening to them, hearing not just what the words they say, but the words they don't say, hearing their heart. What are they really trying to accomplish? What are their goals in the future? Do they want to expand to have multi-locations? Do they want to sell their business in the future? These are all things that we learn in some of our first even consultations, because it helps us understand how we're going to design for them. If they want to sell, we need to package this thing up like a product that somebody can buy one day, make it really brand centric.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But then if they want to open multiple locations, you
Right.
got to make sure you have a design that expands across the country. and
Absolutely.
has
Is not
accessibility.
regionally tied or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
I never really thought about those considerations.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, what a really cool metamorphosis that
Yeah.
you went through and you took into your design business. And wow. Huh. Very cool. Yeah, I would say that's a great fear. Yeah.
Hopefully to get over.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Fear of losing control of everything.
Which is so hard.
Yeah, it is.
Totally. All right. My fear. So this is a funny one. When I was in college, I worked at a summer camp, and I was like a camp counselor. And one night, a group of guys snuck into our cabin right as all of my cabin guys were falling asleep. And right when you like first drop into sleep, and again, these are like high schoolers, so we've been talking and yakking and trying to get them all quiet. And so they finally do. The lights go out. We're all right on that edge of falling asleep. And then these guys that snuck in through the bathroom window were hiding in the bathroom. And they waited for us all to get to that moment of like quietness. And then they jumped out of the bathroom, running and screaming through the cabin and
my
just ran out.
gosh.
That's it. They just ran out. It scared me so bad. Like, I mean, it was one of those just like adrenaline, fear. Nobody knew what it was, because by the time like we woke, there was no lights. It was just all of this sound. I walked around with this fear of being scared for years, because it was like this almost like triggering, like, so anytime I was alone, or if I was alone in the house, I had to like walk around the house, make sure everything was quiet, make sure like everything was locked up, make sure, peek behind things. Like, this nervousness followed me until my 30s.
Wow.
And I finally, after a season of like living alone and actually having to face that and be comfortable of actually being kind of in that space and not someone being jumped out and being scared, it finally started to like dissipate. But even now, if like, my partner's gone and I'm just sleeping alone, I still have this like little inkling of fear of like something's going to jump out and get me from freaking almost 20 years ago now.
Really?
Yes. So
you live with monsters under the bed.
I guess, yeah. Or someone just that being scared, right? Again,
Being
which is
scared.
another like loss of control in some ways, right? At the end of the day. So yeah, that's been a big fear I've had to work to get over in my journey of sorts. So anyways, yeah, fun fears. Okay,
Yeah,
but here's my
right.
question.
Okay.
And then, so with all of this kind of creative work that you've done, I'm always curious to learn like what book has shaped you from a creative perspective or maybe a professional perspective. But is there a specific book or something that you read where you're like, all of a sudden it gave you something new to look at or think about that you applied into your business?
Yes, and this is going to be it's going to be a little sketchy because it was written by my husband. I know that sounds like I'm plugging his work, and I am, because I think he's a genius. But he wrote a book called Never Drop the Ball Again. And, we're married. So he was like, would you read this and just, give it a once over. I'm a slow reader. I have dyslexia. And I'm also ADD, so put those two together. It's a good time. And so he was like, if you can read this in a short sitting, anyone can. And I was like, it's totally true. So I was reading it, and I was so inspired by it. And he was already kind of coaching my practice a little bit at the time. But when I finished reading it, I was like, I think I need you to come on to into my firm more as a fractional part of our company to take what you're proposing in this book and make it happen for us. And it literally has changed my practice.
Wow.
100%.
Wow.
Specifically because I did want to get to a place in the future where I could potentially sell my practice or be set up in order to bring on partnerships and share the load with partners in the future. I mean, just things like that. But I was operating like a solopreneur, and I wasn't ready to do that. And I needed a major shift. So reading his book got my brain in a different direction. You would think we lived together, he was slow feeding me the book, over time. He's not like that. It was all in here and it all came out.
Oh, wow.
Really?
And then I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
Wow.
fantastic.
That's
and
great.
it's like a Seth Godin style, real small, read it in like an hour.
Those are
well,
my
for
favorite
me,
books.
it was like 2 hours. But still, that was short.
Wow.
I have to
Very
pick
cool.
up a copy of
Yeah.
the book. I'm
Yeah, it's-
quite intrigued.
I know. It's on Amazon.
Okay. And never drop the ball again?
Never drop the ball
Okay.
again.
Awesome.
Never drop the ball. We should put those in
Yeah.
a link in the show
Sure.
notes. We
Absolutely.
can totally
Yeah,
do that.
that would be great.
We'll plug it.
Okay, awesome.
You can't plug it. We can.
I
No,
can't.
I'm
Yes.
kidding.
That's exactly right. It seems weird.
You're biased. We're not.
Yeah, totally, for sure.
Well, the theme of this podcast is all about reflection and growth through mistakes and
Yeah.
failures that we've made in business. And I was at an event this morning and they were talking about, vulnerability. And I think as a business owner, being a business owner is probably the most vulnerable position you can ever put yourself into.
Yeah.
And so let's pull down our pants and talk about
Show me yours part, right? I love the name of this podcast. It's awesome.
I know, isn't it amazing? Oh, you should have been in the room when we came up with it. It was hilarious. I'll have to tell you about that another
Yes.
time. But tell us, if you look back through all of your steps, and it sounds like kind of a natural evolution within your business, what was that one mistake that you reflect back on, and what did it look like? What did it feel like? What did it smell like? Taste like?
Yeah. Okay. So I think, you know how it's a mistake and you don't know it's a mistake till you look back and go, oh, that was a mistake. I shouldn't have done it that way.
Yeah.
For me, I didn't know myself well enough in the beginning to really shape my business towards who I am. And so I think my biggest mistake was actually being a residential designer. And it's not because I don't like people's houses. I love people. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning is thinking about my clients. I think about who they are and what they're doing and how I want to help them. And it's not that helping people with their homes, I had no bias. I have no judgments about how much people spend on their stuff. It's nothing like that. But I'm wired for business. When I was a little girl, I loved you telling me about this, about your wall, because it made me think of my story. When I was a little girl, I would play at my grandmother's house. She lived in East Texas, and she had all these tons of irises in this big garden. And that was one of my favorite places to play and pretend and stuff. And it wasn't until I was a teenager that on a trip back, you know how when you grow up and you go through those teen years, it's all like all of a sudden somebody peels the film off of life and you start seeing things differently.
Oh, yeah.
I remember getting to her house and looking down those flowers that I had played in just a year or so before without paying attention and seeing signs in front of all the different flowers. And I went over and was reading them, and I realized that she was hybridizing irises and selling them because she lived on the highway, like on 2-lane highway in Texas. And she was, came from a generation where women don't start businesses,
Yeah.
And she was an entrepreneur. She was running that business on the side, and I didn't even know it. I just went in and she always had cake. That's what mattered, right?
That's all that matters. It's like my pappy and the suckers, right?
That's exactly right.
I didn't care about the Playboys in the bathroom. I just wanted that sucker.
That's exactly right. And so because of that, I could tell you 5 more stories about the same thing. I started my first business when I was 19, and I've been a business owner ever since. And what I learned, so the biggest thing that I wish I would have known before, and I learned that it wasn't a failure, but I've been a better business owner by understanding that we are wired a certain way, and how we're wired really helps us attract the right people. It helps us enjoy the work of our hands that we do every day. And when I discovered that I was wired for business and I thought about business all the time, it made me understand that I'm most attractive to business owners and I'm most attracted attractive to them and I'm attracted to them. So I'm drawn to them. I want to hear their stories. I want to help them. You don't have to like get me in the right headspace to do a project for them. I am just ready to go. And it has made me a better business owner to understand how I'm wired and who I'm meant to get to. And that was a mistake I made for years. Not knowing that about myself made me, if I was going to have hiccups or bumps in the road in projects, or just have projects that I was like, man, this is not going well, or we didn't really connect. It's not because the person was the wrong person or I was the wrong person for them, or I was doing a bad job, necessarily any of that. It was just, I wasn't wired to just do that part of interiors. I was wired to help businesses grow. I was wired to think like a business owner, and it changed everything for me.
So you moved into more of your true, authentic self in that moment.
That is it. Not living in my authentic self for all that time. And it wasn't like I was, faking anything. It's just I didn't know that about myself, and I didn't know how important it was going to be to have that set right.
God, that's beautiful.
Well, and it
love
sounds like
that.
it's become your business model.
It has.
Like
become a
now
business
you're
model.
helping other business owners bring themselves through in their business. So I'm curious, like, how do you help other business owners navigate the mistakes maybe they're making and putting a front of their business that isn't them, or
Yes.
kind of walking through that? Like, how is that mistake now helping you?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm dovetailing again into this story about my husband, because his business, after I adopted, he came into my business with that book. We have started now partnering together, working with my clients, which become our clients, exactly on this piece of it, when they don't know really who they are. And I call this just being unbranded. If they have a logo, a lot of times they'll go, oh, I've got a brand. And I'm like, let's talk about it. Yeah, that's not a brand.
Yeah.
That's just an icon. And it might have been formed for many reasons. Sometimes it's the fastest thing I could put together because I had to get something going. Hey, I get it. We have to be nimble, and we have to sometimes get scrappy when we're starting our companies, right?
So true.
But when we're going to have longevity, it's really about understanding ourselves, how we're wired, and who we're wired for. So that story I just told about myself is what we help other companies do now, is understand who they are, what they're wired to do, what their sweet spot is, and how they do it, and who they do it for, and what they're delivering to them. And my husband's actually going to be writing a book specifically on that coming soon. But we work together with clients, and then I springboard out of that into the design, because now I feel like I have such a rich pool to draw from to take into their design. And it's really helped some of our clients.
Talk a little bit with us about a brand. What exactly is a brand? It's not a logo. What is it?
Logo. I think it's that story element. It creates this width and breadth to what the company is doing. I think it actually, if the company can absorb it, it changes the model of what they do and how they do it, because it starts to infuse into their workforce. Now their workforce actually has something to anchor to, and they can believe in something because it's a story, it's a narrative, it's rich and deep, and it's not just we sell widgets. It's we're
It's the culture.
It's the culture. We're answering a question. We're solving a problem, but the why we're doing that is back there, and we get to all of that, and that's that. It's sometimes hard to talk about it, because not every business was started by a solopreneur, but most of them were. And that story way back there is part of that foundational story, narrative that's built up into the company, and why we do what we do, and what does it make people feel like to be in contact with who we are, what our service, our product, blah, 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 all of those things. And how do we want them to leave? How are we trying to change their lives or make their lives better, or, whatever we're doing? It is answering all of those questions in such a way that if the brand is well established, it can be a part of the HR. It goes into how then do we treat one another? How do we treat our clients? How do we want to be known in this community? And boy, does that make a difference for the life of your business?
Yeah.
And this seems like, again, just one of those things where every owner has that why story, and yet pulling that out into a brand seems to be also so many business owners' biggest Achilles heel. They can't figure out how to actually take that why and turn it into a brand.
Exactly.
And in your own experience, I'm curious, like, what do you think that edge is? What is that struggle that so many small business owners have of being able to pull that forward?
I think it's a misunderstanding of what branding is. I think they just think, because it's branding, marketing, and then, the visual collateral that goes with those. Those are three different things. They're three different parts. So even the branding piece, we don't do graphic design. We work with a graphic designer, and we'll bring all of the knowledge that we've gathered, and we start turning it into image words that then we'll work with the graphic designer and go, okay, these are the images that we are pulling from their story, and we think this is going to influence that visual collateral that you can make for them. And then we release it to them to do that piece of it. I think most people, when they just think of that piece and they go, oh, I've got this. Yeah. But they're missing that depth. And I think that depth is going to influence so much of their company and their future. Even things like, am I going to expand? Or does this just need to be one location? Yeah. Am I going to, sell it in the future? I mean, because those are big things that, as you've had your company for how many years now?
We're coming up on our 8th anniversary.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So you've had this time now to think about the future and what do I want to do with this thing? Because you've put all the blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you've gotten a pretty good thing growing here.
Yes, we do. I'm pretty proud.
I've gotten to watch you too, which is really fun. Anyway, so yeah, that changing from just seeing it as an element that they push out on a business card to something that foundationally changes the way they're approaching it. I think the biggest thing is A, they don't understand that piece of it. And B, there's a cost associated because there's some mental technology that we bring to the table to work through with them that is, just part of our IP,
What's that transformation that you see though? I have a feeling that there's got to be this series of aha moments that you get to watch and capture.
Yes.
And it's probably not just one. It's probably a whole series of them. But like from the first aha to maybe not the last aha, but, to the point of where you get them. What does that transformation generally look like? Like, I'd love to watch that.
It's really fun to be a part of because there's a lot of self-discovery in it because they're like, I never thought about that. I didn't realize. And we do very much like what I just talked about with my story of my grandmother. We help them think back into their history as to what has made you who you are, because that is all a part of your business. All of those influences are coming through, whether you know that or not. If you can anchor onto it, it's powerful. And so when they have those moments, it is transformational. They get this new, a lot of them get the lights come on, they understand why they love certain parts of their business and why they hate certain parts. And it's given them freedom to go, oh, we'll be like, it's time to hire that part out if you can, love what you do and understand that you're doing it because of the way that you're made. You're doing well. You're attracted to certain things because of the way that you're made, and how to really tune that business up so that you have fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's plenty of parts of our businesses that are not fun.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, I think that this conversation is really interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in your evolution of going from residential into full commercial, you identified your own brand.
That's 100% true.
Right? So tell me, I want to just kind of circle back around to that before. What were those feelings? Like you loved doing residential, you loved helping people in their homes, but there was something that was going on inside Robin.
Yeah.
Tell us, what was that something?
It was like kind of just being unfulfilled. Like I liked the people and working with the people was great, but I could tell there was that little itch. There was something. And because I was doing a little mix of both, when I was working on the commercial jobs, I was firing on all cylinders. And it was honestly my husband who was the one that said, you have to go with commercial only. Because he was like, it's in the tone of your voice when you talk about your projects. He goes, your countenance changes. There's a lilt in your voice, and there's so much energy when you're talking about it. He goes, when you start telling me about residential, and there's not one bad thing to say about any of my I love everyone I've worked with. But he says, you just have a different demeanor when you talk about residential. And he said, you are going to enjoy what you do if you do it for the people you were made to work with.
Oh, so true.
Yeah,
So
he's kind of a
true.
sage.
He is.
A little bit of a Yoda.
And then, fast forward into today.
Yeah.
What's that shift? Looking back at the Robin of 2017-ish, where's the difference?
Yeah. Well, there's new challenges with commercial, but I feel like I've fine-tuned my offering. Like, I feel like I know what I bring to the table now. Before, if you would have said, what makes you different than other designers? I would be like, my hair's curly. I had a hard time, but now I can put my finger on it because I understand that the way that I'm wired makes me think differently. And so the way I like to tell clients sometimes is, I don't make it pretty, I make it profitable. Because I'm not thinking about just those things. Now, granted, we love making it pretty. Don't let me get that wrong. We love to, bring in the best materials and the best creative ideas to, make it eye-catching. But it's all about telling that story that is their unique story. And so, I think just getting that thing pulled up to the front where I could go, this is what makes me different. This is what makes me really good at my job. And because I'm sure that when it comes to the nuts and bolts of what interior design is, everything from, construction documents to whatever that we produce, I'm sure somebody can do that better than me. And I'm planning to hire them. Because what I love is I love listening, and I love this branding piece of it where we walk through their story with them. And then I love, just working with them one-on-one and getting into the project with them. But it's changed how I approach it for sure.
So fun.
What, in kind of that same vein, I'm curious, what mistakes do you see a lot of business owners making when it comes to their interior design or their commercial spaces? What are the 2 or 3 common things across the board that you feel like you often observe?
Lighting is number one. Not realizing what an impact it makes. Matter of fact, it's the thing I talk to them most about when it comes to HR.
Absolutely.
Is how do we keep our best employees? And how do we make them love? They spend more time in your office, if they're, not remote, they spend more time in your office than they do at home. So how can we make them feel really cared for and appreciated so that they want to come in and do their best work? And lighting is one of those things. I think it's because the design build industry has set some norms for offices that I think are just poor. Yeah. Which is, ceiling troffers, with 2x4, troffer lights in them, and, fluorescence was the way we were. And now, we're putting panels in, so that's an improvement. But sometimes the light color is just like we're going to get a root canal instead of, do our job today, unless, we're working on a root canal. But
studies show that natural light increases productivity. I've seen studies anywhere from 25 to 45%. So you choose your source, everybody, but it drastically increases productivity.
Yes, I believe that is true. And so one of the projects I worked on, it was a satellite company. And so they had most of their workforce were coding. And I walked in the first day just to see the space, and all the lights were off. And I was like, are they all working remote today? And she was like, oh, they're here. And I would walk around the corner, and they're in their little cubes, and they're all in the dark. And I was like, why are the lights off? And she said, they hate the lighting. Yeah. And I was like, number one on our list is going to be changing. And their budget was very low. And so we just used some really creative ideas of bouncing light around the room that just made them feel warm and cozy, but not with this thing over their head the whole time.
It makes all the difference.
Oh, it totally does.
So lighting, what's another thing that you often see?
Another thing is forgetting to have a good break space. It's another thing. It's about employees. I mean, goodness, I love my team. Without them, I can't do what I want to do. I can't have the company I want to have. So I have to think about what is going to make them, again, feel cared for
Yeah.
and loved and taken. I thought about you and I wanted you to have this. I mean, in our office, it's the small things like having some snacks, but having a break space that they feel like they get to literally get a break from their work space, go into another location. I often encourage them, if you can break this up into more than just one break space, if your office will allow to have another just quiet space, a getaway, a phone booth, especially if you've
fun.
got, if you've got bigger work rooms and it's hard for people to get privacy, they feel like they can't have that call with their doctor or something if everyone's going to hear what their ailment is,
Yeah.
And so small things, I mean, those are not cheap pieces of furniture, so to speak, but I think that they go a long way to translate to companies, to their clients that, they really care. And I think the final thing would be understanding that branding matters, that spending some money on that in their space. They think it's just a sign on the top or, something behind the front desk, but it really is about integrating it throughout the space that can create that experience. It's that brand cohesion that begins to get into the psychology of the people that go into that space. They just kind of absorb it.
I think you just nailed it. It creates that experience. That's exactly what a brand is, at least in my mind.
Yeah.
That's, it goes so much more beyond a logo and a couple colors.
Absolutely.
Because you associate that's the visual, but
That's
you
exactly
associate
right.
feelings to that logo and those colors.
That's exactly
and
right.
that's the brand.
And that's what we try to do is then infuse those feelings throughout the space. Everything, every layer that you can, everything from paint colors to lighting to furniture, it's all layered up together.
That's so cool. Can I come work for you?
Sure.
Looking back at that Robin of, 2017, 2016, what would you go back in time and tell her?
Change now. change to the commercial side as soon as you can. Because that was really the biggest change for me was getting my head right into what I was made to do and who I was made to do it for. And not give up. Don't give up. You're going to hit hard stuff.
What about all of the listeners here who may be sitting in that unsettled place that 2017 Robin was sitting in? And maybe they don't know who their true self is. I mean, you didn't even know then.
I didn't.
Right? You had no clue that you were sitting in the wrong spot. So how do business owners who's living in a little unsettledness take that deep look within and say, whoa, what did they do?
Yeah. Well, I would say buy my husband's new book, but it's not out yet. It will be soon. But no, it is. I think it is about finding out what makes you tick. What do you love? What has historically been a thread you can trace back to childhood? I believe we're made with purpose and that it comes out as we're children, because, given the best circumstances, we will pretend the thing, we will act it out as children. When I was little, I didn't play house.
I didn't either.
I played business. I would set my... Did you?
I did.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. I've never met anything.
Pretend desk with a box and
Oh my
everything.
gosh,
And
that's awesome.
all I knew, people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I was like, I just want an office. I knew I wanted to wear like business clothes and sit in an office.
Oh my gosh.
What?
We're soul sisters.
I knew that from the moment I met you.
When my friends wanted to play house and I was going to be hanging out with it, playing with them, I would pretend I was pregnant and then I would hand the baby to somebody else. Be like,
That is awesome.
Here, y'all take that. And I am a mom of two amazing men now, and so I've never, regretted the days that I've had with them. But it is true that I was wired as a child to think about working, and so even my play was pretending to be. And I did too. I pretended I would imagine myself in my business clothes, driving my sports car.
I even envisioned my older self with glasses.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And here
so
I am.
funny. I love it. That is great. So it is true that to be able to, as a business owner, look into the thread of your history and go, what have I always been attracted to? It will give you an indication of what your best future could be if you're thinking that way, really engaging that part of yourself. And who does that person really want to serve? Who do you want to be solving problems for, creating products for?
So true.
The piece to me, like 100%. And what I so often see the edge for a lot of people is permission. You can love all but they think whether they invest, thousands of dollars in a coach that tells them what to do,
Right.
or they buy onto a model that tells them what to do, or they buy into a franchise that they never get to that place of giving themselves permission to actually do it.
Yeah.
So what was the permission for you? How did you give yourself permission?
I think it was that encouragement from my husband, having someone else that loves you and knows you, really speaking to that thing and go, I know you, you're going to love this part of your life. And it was not easy. Matter of fact, the first 6 months or so was a little financially thin. I was like, did I choose poorly? But over time, it all came back because it was the right direction. But I think that permission is, having someone else in the process with you that can help reflect and process that. Even just, who do you know me to be? What have you seen that you think is natural in me? Have a friend go with them and give yourself permission to reevaluate, because that was my big thing.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think that's a perfect place just to stick a pen in it and say, all right, we're done. We're well done. Yeah. Wow. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing such a unique concept to the couch in Grandma's living room today.
Yes.
I think it's easy just to kind of get locked up into, well, I made a bad financial mistake or I fired the wrong person or something like that. But I love this abstract thought process of, making a mistake and not being true to yourself. And I think that's probably more common than not.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. But Robin, I'd love for you to tell everybody how they can do business with you, get in touch with you.
Yes.
We've already talked about a little bit of your badassery, but tell everybody a little bit more.
Sure. So we have a showroom and a studio downtown Colorado Springs. On the door, it says by appointment only, but we're at 616 North Tejon. So we are available if you need to see furniture or sit in a chair. We have a showroom. And then PasleyCommercialInteriors.com. We really work to make that as long as possible. That is our website. So PASLEY commercialinteriors.com. Is our website, and it's where you can see some of the work that we've done. You can see our team and see what offerings we have, and you can even book an appointment with me.
I have been to her showroom, and I think I've sat in almost all of the chairs, and they're incredible. There's one chair I keep eyeing, and one day I'm going to be like, Robin. But in the meantime, you need to pop up to Brian's office and convince him to order a new chair. Have you seen his chair?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, gosh. Be prepared to be mortified. Right, Jason?
Yes, he needs some new chairs. 100%.
That's awesome.
All right, everybody. This was your Show Me Yours. Thank you, Robin.
You're so
Thanks,
welcome.
Robin.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Jason. And we will see you on the next episode.